Hey there, I'm Napster. Welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to be going in depth on lore cards in the board game Arcs. Note that this isn't a how to play video, but rather a discussion on the special lore cards in the game. If you haven't yet learned how to play, check out the other video on my channel. This is part 2 of the series. If you want to learn how to play well with the first 4 lore cards in the game, Cool Priest through Mirror Plating, check out that video. Without further ado, let's dive in. Starting off, we have Hidden Harbors. Now, Hidden Harbors is a very nice card to have. A very well-rounded defensive card. It provides two main benefits. The first benefit is that you always build ships fresh. The second benefit is that when defending in battle, the attacker cannot collect raid dice if you have a fresh defending starport. Now, what that basically means is anytime you have a starport, people can just not raid that until they damage it first. And if that sounds good, it's because it is. It's hugely beneficial because people can't raid your starports. They'll have to battle it first. And a lot of times, when they're trying to battle it first to just deal one hit to damage it, so then they can raid it, they may end up rolling too many hits, especially if they don't have something like secret torpedoes or skirmishers that lets them re-roll or manipulate the dice that they're rolling, and it can be really risky for them because they might overshoot and end up destroying the starport, and then there's no chance to raid. It's also great when paired up with cities. So if you have a double building slot planet and you put a city in a starport, it is a great defensive thing to do to just protect all your buildings, basically make you unraidable. Because again, if you have any buildings on the map, people cannot raid your ships. So having these double slot planets will just make you unraidable in the game, and that is a massive advantage. To have your rivals not be able to raid you without going through a lot of motions of taking out your ships, your defending ships, damaging your starport without destroying it, and then finally raiding. So all in all, that will take a lot of battles to get through, and there's a lot of risk involved as well. Um, there, so the main thing is the raiding. It prevents that, but you can't forget the fact that it lets you build ships fresh. That is a much smaller benefit, but there are a lot of times where rivals will send like one ship into your starport after you send a fleet out, just to make all your future builds very inefficient. And this completely negates that because you just build the ships fresh. You don't have to spend that extra action to repair, that extra pip that you really need to build extra ships and get more buildings out on the map. So it's a very nice card. And it's also really strong in the campaign too. I'm in general not going to be mentioning the campaign much in this series because lore cards are in general extremely situational for the campaign. Since the way it works is there are one lore card per player randomly shuffled into the campaign deck. So the chances that you're going to see each individual card are relatively rare. But Hidden Harbors is a really, really strong one for specifically outlaws in the campaign. And the reason for that is if the empire is strong, especially in cases with like an admiral or steward, where there's plenty of imperial ships on the map and you are an outlaw, this card is really nice because it lets you build your ships fresh, even when there's imperial control in your starports. So it lets you essentially be around the empire and still function without having the added nerf of having weaker ships. Especially Founder. Founder is great for that. But really any fate that wants to become an outlaw. If there's a admiral or steward in the game that's calling for edicts too much through the council, maybe even a magnate or something. Just a fantastic defensive card all around. In terms of what leaders it's good and bad for, it really is good for all leaders. There's not a leader that isn't that doesn't like this card, but the anarchist is especially especially likes it because they're not going to have as many cities on the map, so they can um, get around with just having some starports on the map. And how I was talking about earlier about if you're battling a starport in hopes of damaging it so you can raid if your opponent has hidden harbors, the anarchists, they aren't going to be putting cities, so they will just have these single starports spread out. And those single starports are especially hard to raid because the extra hits, you can't like tag them onto cities. So maybe if you're attacking a double building slot planet, you might have a city and a starport. And if you roll 2 hits, then you can damage the starport, damage the city. And then you'll be able to raid next. But if you just have those single starports, like the anarchist will, then rolling that second hit will just get rid of the starport and completely eliminate the raid threat at all. It's also pretty good for the Elder as well. The Elder is a very defensive leader. They can't be ransacked. They get to influence when um, their trophies are taken. And adding this extra level of defense onto their already impressive defensive kit is quite huge. It makes them really hard to deal with in the game, almost to an impressive level. If they can get a lot of ships out early, or even a lot of starports out early, not even necessarily the ships, this is going to be a huge boon throughout the game. It's not really that bad for any leaders, but in terms of what leaders it's not as good for, the Shaper benefits a little bit less from it, because they don't catapult from starports, they catapult from gates. So this card is a little bit less useful because you're going to be putting fewer starports onto the map. And if you're putting more starports onto the map, trying to take advantage of this card more, then you are playing more into the limitations of the Shaper. So it's a little bit like it's not like a terrible situation. It's just you're going to have downsides one way or the other. All right, the next lore card is Signal Breaker. Signal Breaker is a lore card that says in battle, if all attacking ships are fresh, then you can ignore one intercept you roll. So this is just an okay card. The main draw is that it lets you use assault and raid dice more safely. You can roll one intercept and be fine, and not have um, like one assault dice that you were hoping doesn't land on an intercept, completely destroy your game plan. Um, it, it it basically lets you be riskier with the dice because if you are using assault dice, you're inherently adding risk to your battles, and this lets you prevent some of it. Now, the reason it's not the best card is that it's relatively limited. So all the ships that you're battling with have to be fresh. So if you're going to use this, you either have to move all your damaged ships out at the start of the battle, or be battling with a completely fresh fleet, um, such as one that you've been building over the past couple of turns. And the chances you'll have to do that are somewhat limited, especially if your opponent gets a jump on you. And you're going to want to get the jump on your opponents, but ultimately there are going to be circumstances where they battle you first and you need to retaliate. So if they damage, say, 2 of your ships in a fleet, in a 4-ship fleet, then you're not going to be able to use this card without sacrificing 2 of your ships by moving them out, or sacrificing the use of this card. And it's also somewhat outclassed by Secret Torpedoes. Now, Secret Torpedoes is another lore card that lets you re-roll assault dice for attacking ships. And I used to think that Signal Breaker was just a terrible card because Secret Torpedoes just lets you re-roll these assault dice, whereas Signal Breaker only lets you ignore an intercept. But I think my thoughts have changed a little bit on that matter. I think Signal Breaker, while it isn't the best card, it definitely does have its uses and its place in the game. So the advantages that it has against Secret Torpedoes are the fact that, first of all, it can be used with raid dice, whereas Secret Torpedoes are just for destroying ships and buildings. So being able to be used with raid dice is kind of nice. The fact that you can go in, maybe send two ships to raid your opponent, and just roll the dice and not have your ships wiped out, even if you're attacking against a larger fleet. Just to go for those small tactical raids. And those aren't the plays you're going to want to be going for, but sometimes it's the plays you need to be going for to get that last resource you need for an ambition, or to prevent your rival from using a powerful guild card they just got. Maybe they just got Silver Tongues and you really need to snipe that away before they're able to steal your important resources or guild cards. So it does let you play a little more tactically and safer when you're doing so. The other advantage it has is that um, it lets you ignore intercepts rather than just re-rolling them. So what this means is that you don't have a chance of rolling them again. One important thing to note when using this card, it lets you ignore one intercept you roll. So if you are attacking a rival who has the lore card Mirror Plating, it does not work against that because Mirror Plating adds an intercept. It's not a rolled intercept. So just be aware of that. Your ability won't work against Mirror Plating rivals. It will still intercept you, and it's not good. In terms of what leaders it's good for, this is actually another reason why I think it is not as bad as it's typically assumed to be. There are certain leaders that get quite a lot of value out of it. Most notably, the Corsair. The Corsair has the downside that they can't collect more assault dice than skirmish dice. And the reason this is good is because if you have, say, 3 ships and you're trying to do as much damage as you can, well, you're going to roll 2 skirmish and an assault die, which is not it's not much power behind your attacks. Even though 3 ships would normally be a solid like attacking force, at least early and mid game, maybe not as much late game. But the Corsair rolling those assault dice are risky because um, it opens you up to the possibility of being intercepted, but it also, since you're not rolling that many, it doesn't really pack the same punch that another leader would. So, for example, a different leader could just roll, say, 3 assault dice and say, it's okay, I'm going to take an intercept. I can take that because I'm going to be doing this much damage. Whereas the Corsair can't say that. So, being able to ignore those intercepts that you roll is nice because it keeps you a little safer. The Rebel, it's also quite nice for. This mostly when you're raiding. So the Rebel gets 2 extra dice when they're battling, but they aren't going to have many big fleets. So this helps you when you're raiding because you can go up to a building that has defending ships and you can ignore maybe one intercept to take a raid without having all your ships blown up. Which, if all your ships are blown up, you don't actually get to spend keys, and then the battle was wasted and you lost a bunch of ships. In terms of leaders it's bad for, the Quartermaster is one leader that stands out as not getting as much value from it. The Quartermaster in general, if they're playing like the correct Quartermaster strategy, they're going to have a bunch of starports out on the map and are going to be trying to control their rival starports. So they don't care as much about being intercepted. And there are cases where you're going to get intercepted by a fleet of 6, and then you're screwed. But if you're just taking smaller battles, like against 2 to 4 ships, an intercept may damage all your ships, but then you can just heal them up after the battle. And in cases like that, you just don't get as much value out of it because ignoring the intercept, it doesn't matter because those hits are essentially nullified after the battle. Moving on to Lore Card 7, Repair Drones. Repair Drones is kind of a different take on a defensive or safer battle card. Repair Drones says after you battle as an attacker, you can repair 1 loyal attacking ship. So this lets you go in, say with 2 fresh ships, 1 damage ship, take a battle, and repair a ship afterwards. Very simple, very straight to the point. It's just a generally solid card. It's never very flashy. It's just okay, but it's going to give you consistent value throughout the game. Because if you are taking those battles and rivals are taking battles against you, you're going to constantly have damaged ships. And the ability to repair them without spending your valuable administration actions or sometimes construction actions is quite nice. Um, the nuances of this card, there's a little more than you'd think at first. It is a very simple card, but there are different ways to use it. So the typical thought is just you can roll some assault dice, and this card will just cancel out a flame. But you can also use it to repair your ships just in general. So let's say you have an attack action and you roll all skirmish dice. Well, you're not posing any threat to your own ships. You're dealing damage, but you're still getting that repair. So in cases where you might be copying off of an administration or a construction card, you could instead pivot to an aggression card, take a battle, and still get the repair you're looking for. It basically makes the repair action much more versatile and usable for you. Which repairing is a very important part of the game. It's just normally it's a very inefficient action. So this will let your ship stay on the map longer, get more value, and make it harder for your rivals to take out. In terms of leaders that like or dislike it, the Mystic quite likes it. The Mystic has fuel and material, sorry, outrage. So a card that lets them basically um, use material in a way is quite nice for them. And this card doesn't let them use material, but material is used to build a repair, and that's essentially the same as keeping your ships alive because it material and construction pips put ships on the map and they repair them to prevent them from being destroyed. The Mystic can't do that as easily because they can't use material, and this is like a remedy for that. The Overseer also quite likes it because in setup they scrap ships. They lose three of their ships, so they have a max of 12. And in cases like that, where you have fewer ships than your rivals, making each ship count is incredibly important. So the Overseer can pump out a lot of ships by damaging their starports, but they don't have the same ability to keep them on the map. And when it's just as easy for your rival to blow up two ships as it is to blow up one, that ability can be kind of risky sometimes. Like let's say a rival comes in with a fleet of six ships and just blows up your starport. Well, that extra ship that you had doesn't really do much. Um, but this will let you keep the ships on the map longer, prevent them from going to trophies, and letting you get the same value of your ships that a normal 15 ship cap person would. In terms of leaders, it's bad for the quartermaster does not like this card because they are going to be repairing a lot of ships after every battle, anyways. This is basically just a worse quartermaster ability. Um, so it's completely redundant with the quartermaster because they're going to have usually a lot of starports on the map. They're going to have enough starports to repair all their ships after a battle, and make this card not actually help them very much. The final card I'm going to be talking about today is Gate Ports. Gate Ports is a very fun lore card. It says you may build starports on gates, max one per gate, and when rival ships take a move into a gate you control with a fresh loyal starport, capture one agent of the rival. Okay, a lot to unpack here. The first thing is that you can build starports on gates. Just take a build action when you control a gate. Or well, you don't need to control, but it's good to control, so you can build it fresh and get the benefit of capturing agents. But that means you can also now build ships on gates and catapult move from gates. So it's quite nice because it adds a whole new layer to the game. These gates, which were previously barren wastelands that are really only good for fast travel, are now extra building slots for you that you can put your starports on to pump out ships for. And this can be either good or bad depending on how you use it. Um, the ways you want to use it, you want to build starports outside of your rival starports. So let's say a rival has a starport in a planet of cluster one. So you're going to want to put a starport in the gate of cluster one, because if you get that gate right outside their starports, then they're always going to have to move into your starport to get their ships out and use them. And this is really an important thing to take note of when you're using this card, because a lot of times you're going to want to block the gates outside of your cluster. So, like if you have a cluster where you have a couple cities and some starports, you're going to want to put one ship in the gate so that you can prevent people from catapulting in. Because typically rivals will be able to um, like circumnavigate the map, go around your blockades if you try to put it elsewhere, or just easily go into the other gate you're controlling. So the reason having close to you is better, so that rivals have to overextend to get to you. But with the gate ports, the point of putting things in the gate isn't necessarily to block the gates. It's instead to get people to move into your starports, to get those agents and get a huge lead on Tyrant, which is a very strong ambition if you have a lot of them, and if you can get a lot of agents like this. So you're gonna want to like just block the rival starports instead of defending your own. This is certainly more of an aggressive card that you're gonna want to be using rather than a defensive card. Um, the ability to catapult from gates is also pretty cool, because if a rival controls the gate that you're in, that your starport is in, well, you can still catapult past that. Because remember, catapult move only ends if you move into a system controlled by a rival. So if your rival comes in and controls your starport, trying to make your ships damaged, or maybe just wants to battle it in the future, then you can send your guys out, or send them to go attack, or anything like that. Um, the most important thing to note with this card, though, is that you do not want your rivals to secure gatekeepers. If your rivals have gatekeepers, then your starports in the gates are incredibly vulnerable. Because typically gatekeepers is balanced because people don't have many ships in the gates. Um, but now, if you have a lot of ships and you have starports in the gates, rivals are not only going to be able to demolish your fleets with this card, but they're also going to be getting extra dice when they raid you. And that is always a bad thing. People can come in with 4 ships and roll 6 raid dice against you, and you are screwed. So just make sure that when you put those starports down, you're being safe about how you do it. You don't let rivals get gatekeepers. It's worth ransacking the court to prevent someone getting that. And honestly, if you get that, I would probably just discard it for its prelude action right away. Just put 1 ship in every gate, just so that no rival can raid you and take it. Um, because the value you're going to be getting from it isn't that high, since you're going to be the one with ships in the gate. Other people aren't going to have ships in the gate except maybe 1 or 2 to block their system. So, this is mostly just a threat to you, and honestly, a threat to the lore card in general. In terms of leaders that like it, well, not necessarily like, but the Shaper has an interesting interaction with it. So the Shaper, it's good for the Shaper because the Shaper is going to already have a lot of ships in the gates, since they catapult from gates rather than starports. So they're already going to have a lot of ships in the gates, and this will just let them beef up the gates more by having starports directly in the gates, so they won't have to move into the gates before they catapult out. If anyone wants to keep a tracker on how many times I said gates in that last sentence, I think you'll find the number to be quite high. But the problem with the Shaper, though, is that you already can catapult from gates. So having the starports in the gates isn't that much more value than if you had just not had a starport there. So if you are the shaper, you kind of want to find a way to navigate, like, how am I um, using this lore card without it just acting as my downside? You're going to want to use a lore card to make catapulting from gates an actual upside rather than the opposite way. In terms of Oh, and also the anarchist likes this card. But the anarchist is a a leader that is very easily able to control the tyrant ambition because they can tax cities regardless of if they can control them or not. And if you can not only get captives from taxing people's cities, but also get captives when people try to move, then you're going to be racking up a lot of captives. You're going to have massive control over cards in the court because you can outrace your rivals since you'll have more agents. And the tyrant ambition will kind of be locked down for you always. Because even if a rival has maybe, say, a 3 agent lead, um, they have 3 captives and you have 0, you can still try to race them for that. Whereas in playing a typical leader, you wouldn't be able to. So this can be very huge in locking it down. Rather than it being redundant, I don't think it's a redundant card at all. In terms of leaders that don't like this, the Elder doesn't like the gate ports as much. Um, and the reason is it's almost the opposite of the Anarchist. They only score half power or second place power if they win Tyrant. So getting the extra captives, it loses its primary functionality, which is to win Tyrant. So if you're not winning Tyrant with this card, it's really just some starports that are less safe than your normal starports that are on the planets. So it's a little bit making you overextend, which is never something you want to do in this game. All right, moving on to the tier list I have for today. We've added these cards into their spots. Hidden Harbors, this goes in S tier. Hidden Harbors is a very solid card. It's always helpful. Um, Always a big uh, um, obstacle that your rivals are going to have to get around when they try to raid you. And it's just consistent, strong value. Um, a Signal Breaker. Unfortunately, this card, even though it has its uses and it has its niche in the game, it still just isn't very good. I was going to put it in D tier, but I thought that C tier was more fitting because it does have good usability in some situations. Like if you're the Corsair and you want to do damage safely. So that's why I have it in currently the top of C tier. Repair drones, I have that in mid B tier. It's just a solid card that's always going to get value. The more you battle, which is something you're going to want to be doing already. It's just not the best card. It's not too flashy. So it goes into a solid spot in B tier. And Gate Ports I have in upper B tier. Gate Ports is um it's never the flashiest card. It's definitely a usable card that you can find ways to play around and make fantastic if you have the right combination of leader and rivals. If you find ways to make it work and kind of play into its upsides, while still being cautious of its downsides, it can be a very solid card to use. All right, that is all for today. I hope after hearing this video you have a better grasp of how to play these 4 lore cards and how to use them more effectively, how to play as them, how to maybe play against them more. If you like what you saw, stay tuned for future videos where I'll discuss the other lore cards to come. And trust me, there are a lot left and a lot to be talked about. Thank you for watching and have a good day.